Rising. Today is Monday, January 28th. That's not today's date. Today is January 18th. I don't know where the 28th come from. I'm not sure. But today we're going to speak about subliminal messaging and unrealistic expectations. As you can see in my last video, it was from the past, and prior to me coming across this, I just knew something wasn't right, though. I just knew something wasn't right. I knew that the expectations placed upon me were unrealistic and dangerous. So, we're going to talk about that today. And we're going to start with where the unrealistic expectations come from. Start with subliminal messaging. So, let me let you in on something. The key factor in covert emotional abuse is subliminal messaging. The signals are indirect because the adult involved is likely a survivor of the abuse themselves. They do not communicate with their spouse at all. And this teaches one to avoid direct confrontation. Everything is indirect and avoided. This is social media gossip culture. The perfect place to communicate without communicating at all. I went to a page directly and responded to a subliminal, and she responded to me, "Oh no, it wasn't about you." However, it was, because she had left a voicemail stating the exact words she used in the post. I went to another and was told not everyone is talking about you. But this person was. The topic was definitely erected from something I recently shared. Now, it's one thing if I shared it 10 months ago and I see you posting something, I try to say you're talking about me. But I had posted it like 1 to 2 days before. I went to another, and they couldn't even acknowledge my response, which wasn't rude and even insightful, but the response to me would have made it obvious that they were talking about me. So then you all sub and gaslight to avoid a much needed discussion. You'll get offline and gossip with your friends about it. You sure got me. Shit. Ooh. You got me talking behind my back. Ooh. You got me. Oh, shit. Whatever. Everything you do, right down to a sub on Facebook, can be connected to an over-involvement of a parent with your emotional mind. Thought y'all was gonna sub me and I wouldn't have an answer for it. Now, this here that I just wrote was a response to getting subbed on Facebook in regards to the topics at hand. I get subbed a lot. Even on YouTube. There's always someone saying, if I see XYZ on my timeline or on my page, I'm going to block you or delete you. And I do it, and I was actively doing it before the sub was made. They never remove me. I wish they would, but I make them curious, I believe. And also, really what it is, what's behind that. Someone not removing you when they know that you do not agree with their lifestyle and vice versa, they are purely leaving you in their energy field for validation. That's what that is. So every time they see you do that one thing they don't agree with, they're like, Look at the mess of that girl's life. Oh my God. When is she gonna get it together? I would never. Sorry. I was crying earlier this morning and I'm now seeing all the remnants of that on my face. Excuse me. Anyway, that's what that is. So, I know that these people are victims just based on how they handle things. Imagine how this works in a relationship. What's wrong? Nothing. But then under your breath, gee, I sure wish somebody would. What'd you say? Oh, nothing. I had a relationship dissolve because my lover knew a bit of information about me. And instead of coming to me directly and speaking about it, he would say things like he knew a woman that was dealing with a particular situation, and he wasn't interested in dealing with any woman like that. Well, if he would have said, hey, you are dealing with this situation, I'm not interested, I would have said, you know what, you're absolutely correct. I'm so sorry I didn't bring that, I didn't bring it to your attention before, but because he had made it seem like it was someone else, being indirect, trying to see if I would speak on it, what he caused is for me to overthink. I overthought it. Like, oh my God, I'm actually going through that too. Like, I couldn't see that he was talking about me. I thought he was talking about somebody else. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. Somebody else already did this shit. How dare I? But if he would have just been direct instead of being subliminal, we could have resolved that rather quickly. Instead I was looked at like a liar because it was an omission. So, lie. I did lie, but it wasn't the omission wasn't intentional. The circumstance had caused that, and had he been direct, it wouldn't have gotten that far. But that subliminal, that comes from a level of distrust, mistrust, with being able to be direct. And here is where it starts. In a relationship, the parents direct all of their emotional problems to their child. Think about how many times you've heard about the issues in your parents' relationship but never saw them actually actively work on the complaints. This is a subliminal. Another way this is done is by playing telephone with other family members, a sibling, an aunt, cousin, friend. They are directed to speak with you on an issue, and there is a constant use of mediators. So there's never any direct communication. The subliminal messages can also be found in the way parents program their children, and it bleeds out into how the child communicates with their peers. Here are 3 examples of subliminal messaging from the book, The Emotional Incest Syndrome by Patricia Love. Of all my children, I expect the most of you. And the translation is, I've selected you to be the one to make my life worth living. You've never caused me a minute of trouble, and you're such a good child. Translation, ignore your own needs. I can't handle them. You're the only one who understands me. Translation, I would be totally alone if it weren't for you. And the second subliminal is especially dangerous as it causes a child to deny their needs, and the direct result after this long-term neglect is emotional dysregulation. something commonly found in borderline personality disorder, narcissism, basically the histrionics, those histrionics. Psych. I'm having trouble speaking today. Psychopathy, sociopathy, the histrionics are where you will find a severe emotional dysregulation. And theirs was the most severe in terms of the spectrum of abuse. So from the first page of the book, I will now help you determine if you were a chosen child. If you do not relate, but know a sibling that can, you are still a victim of covert emotional incest. By way of either being a scapegoat, so a child who's blamed for everything, or a left out child. If you are an only child, or in a single parent home, or the worst, a single child in a single parent home. Oh, poor thing. You are more likely to be able to relate to this than many. These titles are common of narcissistic dynamics, but it doesn't always have to be a narcissistic parent. It can be a single parent or passed down behavior. So, number 1, I was the source of emotional support for one of my parents. Number 2, I felt closer to one parent than the other. Number 3, I got the impression a parent did not want me to marry or move far away from home. Number 4, any potential boyfriend or girlfriend was never good enough for one of my parents. Number 5, I felt I had to hold back my own needs to protect the parent. Number 6, I felt responsible for my parents' happiness. Number 7, I sometimes felt invaded by a parent. Number 8, one of my parents had unrealistic expectations of me. Number 9, one of my parents was preoccupied with drugs, alcohol, work, outside interest, or another sibling. And number 10, one of my parents was like a best friend. In your answers to these questions and how you handled it are where unrealistic expectations for self and others lie, as well as behaviors that one will tolerate from another. And I have spoken on some of these already. For example, like looking for a perfect mate. You are intolerable, insufferable, and nobody is good enough. Nobody. He has to have morals from the start. I'm sorry, sir. You couldn't have fucked more than 3 women. I'm sorry, ma'am. You couldn't have fucked more than 3 men in your life. If you do that, you are not perfect. I'm sorry. You know, little stupid shit like that. It's all good. Here, I'm going to be focusing on today, further elaborating and further giving you more details about how I ended up in my car and the unrealistic expectations that we hold for parents, particularly a single parent. All right, so a parent should be solely focused on their children and finances and should do away with self-care if they are financially struggling. The meme in particular that I think of is of a woman sitting in water, appearing to be drowning. She would simply need to stand up to breathe. And around her are comments like, I need child support, I need help. But the realities of what she spends her finances on are hair, nail, bars, trips. While the father is relinquished of the requirement to assist the mother, only one parent is required to reject their own personal needs. We also force women into mistrust of other people with their children and to allow the ring of children to consume their lives. as a result of this expectation, I am a natural. I don't wear wigs, I don't wear weave. And I haven't had false nails or any false hair in over a decade. Look at that. That's real, baby. And they get really long sometimes, but right now, it's best they're not, I guess. Now, this change isn't really bad for me per se, you know, because I am my most authentic self in this way. But the other changes are detrimental to my interpersonal development and assist in creating enmeshments with my children. I occasionally went out, but became reclusive. For 2 years after the birth of my youngest son, the longest I went without my children in my presence was less than 24 hours. In fact, that has almost always been the case since becoming a mother. I had a 6-week stint when my eldest child was young. So he's 13 now. So he was 2 at the time. So 11 years ago, I left my youngest child for 6 weeks. I'm sorry, my oldest child for 6 weeks in the attempt to try to start a life in another state, but it fell through, so I came back. And then 4 years ago, while I was actually pregnant with my youngest child, I had 1 week where I left both children to house sit for my mother, and I didn't even leave her home. In this way, society has removed interdependence, and a parent looking to manifest companionship to avoid scenarios like this is considered codependent and repulsive. Somehow, this person, their desperation is misperceived. There's no way In this way, society has removed interdependence, and a parent looking to manifest companionship to avoid scenarios like this is considered codependent and repulsive. Somehow this person and their desperation is misperceived. There's no way this person loves themselves. There's no way this person knows themselves. They push people away with the desperation to fulfill a basic human need for connection. They do know themselves enough to know that they need that. There is no one actually doing anything on their own out here. Look around. There is literally no successful figure who does not have their success attributed to a support system, whether it be one person or 100, okay? And for those unicorns who only had themselves or their children, they sacrifice nothing other than the emotional and physical well-being of their children. Do I admire that person? To a degree, but understand that their children are carrying wounds from it, even if they reap the rewards. The but here disqualifies the act as honorable. I'm no longer placing that person on a pedestal or as an example as how we should make moves in this world. It is inhumane for the parent and the children involved. Currently, I am at a standstill because I am refusing to continue with this insanity. So, I have mentioned in my video about the lack of success and that my parents had repeatedly uprooted me for needing a month of rent. What they expected of me was to never fall on hard times.
I don't like iPad. Oh, I don't like Netflix. I like go out shooting all like this, like this, like this.
Oh. Okay.
Look on this. Look at that cat. He's going in the water in there.
I see.
She's dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Singing.
Excuse me. Aaron, I'm recording.
I like singing.
I understand. We can talk about it later.
How about Grippy?
Aaron, I will make you leave the room. I need you to be quiet, please. What they expected of me was to never fall on hard times. I would go a year and a half, and it was always a year and a half, without asking anyone for help. I was on disability and expected to work regardless of my limitations. In order to survive, I would not be able to tend to my mental health, which was the cause of me receiving disability. I need everyone to be clear. I received disability on my first try because I was at a global functioning level that was severely low. And I received the same amount as people who have been working their entire lives. A little more than some, because I had been consistently and legally working since I was 11 years old. I am living off of my retirement, not a handout. And I am not ashamed and quite proud of my ability to do this. No one can make me feel shame because what I receive is a premature life accomplishment that 60-year-olds are working to assess. So, though I was dependent on taxes, I had been gaining work credits from the age of 11 to 24. I assisted my parents, and the need to even take up work at 11 was to assist them financially when they fell on hard times. But I could not ask for assistance from them without being considered irresponsible and in need of supervision and fanalization. I did not receive child support. In fact, the father sent a whopping $150 combined, and not always monthly, even though I filed for child support. I lived paycheck to paycheck, and there was very little room for financial error and luxuries. I didn't understand why every single time I came upon hard times, I was problematic because I was doing so much on my own. I was expected to do without many things, and I was under the control of the fathers of the children by way of being seemingly trapped with the children. They were a source of stress instead of joy because they were my companions. And though I did not erode their boundaries in way of emotional fulfillment, I did have enough sense not to do that. So needless to say, I was lacking in every type of fulfillment. I had no friends, and by the fathers not taking responsibility and insisting to raise them, I was not afforded the time to make friends. So, in 2019, I finally collapsed under the pressure again, and this time I started to use drugs. It was a very brief stint, but upon realizing what was going on, I went to my parents and they wanted to uproot me again after I had just built up again. And, they were telling me things like, you need to take accountability. And I was like, but you didn't catch me. You didn't catch me in this act. I came to you. I have a plan. This is what accountability is. You know what I'm saying? Not waiting to get caught, owning up to your wrongs, making a plan to make it right. And they kept telling me I wasn't taking accountability and I wasn't being humble. And I at this point in time, I chose to leave my children with their fathers and run. At this point, I was certain there was something really wrong, and it wasn't just me. So here's a post I wrote shortly after I left my children. Now, I still didn't even have full understanding that it wasn't just me, but I did know that something was wrong and I needed to put my children somewhere else. So I said, I have seen posts where women shame other women for giving their children to others to raise. I wasn't going to say anything, but it bothers me as recently I've had to do the same. Your kids are not supposed to struggle. If you can't get your shit together, that is not their problem. And every moment that you let it be, you are diminishing their light. In the weeks before sending my kids to their fathers, they would cry every night. They were clingy to me as if little animals bracing themselves for impact. They were anxious, and that's not my kids. They're happy where they're at right now, and though the separation kills me, I'm far happier seeing them happy. And if you're about your ego and what you think a mother should do by keeping them with you when you find yourself in a homeless shelter every couple years, you can't keep a job or are dependent on drugs when they either have loving fathers or stable family members that can help them, you ain't a good mother. Period. If you don't have these issues, then I'm not speaking to you. But for those of you who do, better take note and do what's right. Children are the future, and if you leave them in fucked up situations, you're only fucking them up. Don't at me. Do you need me to open that for you? Hand it over.
I got a little ball.
Okay.
Thank you. I got a ball.
Mm-hmm.
I have a ball.
Mm-hmm.
And my fun and a regular
So.
ball.
This right here, this is the gaslighting of the single parent. What I learned is what I was experiencing was projection. I really want all of you to think a con artist. Con's a small group of people. Out of $100,000, right? And the group has proof they were con. They take it to the police, and the police might say something like, wow, this is terrible. You believe that guy? You have to be more careful. This was definitely a lesson, I bet. The police take the evidence of deceit and arrest the con. Place him in jail for fraud and make him pay restitution to his victims. A person from another nation applies to become an American and lies on their application. The U.S. checks this person's story, and with the help of American citizen co-signing lies, the alien is now made a citizen. Here.
Huh? Look, a Scorpy. Look, boy, Scorpy. Scorpies are scary. How?
Is she scary for real?
Yeah. She's like the golden lava.
Oh, goodness. The lava.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, the lava. Okay.
Love this lava.
So, after a few years, America finds an inconsistency and remove the citizenship for fraud. Find them and send them back. Now, listen here. A man will con a woman into a relationship or vice versa. You know, these are not gender specific, you know. They'll have friends aiding and abetting, playing wingmen and wingwomen, lifting their lying friend up. They lie about their entire life. The victim fact checks what they can, and what they can fact check was placed by the liar intentionally. A setup, if you will. So it all checks out. They lie about their entire life. Now, this couple moves on to get married sometimes or to have a child, and suddenly the liar is not who they were before. This parent goes on to tell everyone what a mistake this person was, and everyone tells them it's their fault. You should have chose better. And you better raise that baby on your own. Better not assist the government in tearing that man down with child support, which is restitution. This is what she gets because she opened her legs. Something is wrong with her. And she doesn't even want a good man. She's against that man and she's bitter. And this man goes on to do this to 3 more women. Or this woman goes on to do it to 3 more men. It's all their faults too. Not one shred of blame is placed on the liar. When 4 women come at a man's pockets, he is now the victim. How is he supposed to survive? Why won't they let him see his kids? And he forgets about the lies he told to get the privilege to reproduce with these women. He doesn't have to remember them. Society doesn't hold him accountable on this topic. It's reducing the women and children to trash, to be used and discarded. And this is financial and emotional abuse. It has to stop. See, the most important thing to understand about covert emotional incest is that it is a practice that is done under psychological breaking. Once the parent is at a psychological breaking point, they are unable to rationalize and properly raise their child. They are constantly in lack. They're in a state of lack. And honestly, I wouldn't even blame the parent for that, for the lack. You can blame the parent for what they do in this state, maybe. And maybe even not that. Because if you are not in a psychological state to rationalize, I can't put all the blame on you. You know? So, this puts the parent in lack. And these are the breeding grounds of which covert emotional incest happens. When a parent is being in a state of being abused and unheard too. Okay, because I was one of those people. I was actually being abused, and I, to a degree, I knew I was being abused, but I was so gaslighted. I wasn't always sure. And sometimes I would go to my mother, I would go to my father, and I would tell them what was happening, and nobody would help me. In fact, I would get those same, well, you should have thought about that before you was opening your legs. And it's like, one of my children's fathers date raped me and forged a relationship with me based off of a date rape. I didn't even know. And whose fault was that? That was my parents' fault for not giving me any information to protect myself. Do a banana instead, because it doesn't even look like you ate that orange. Get a banana. Let's try. Can we try a banana? See, this is why. This is why I told you to lay back down, because you're not ready for the day, and you're causing distraction. I want you to try. You didn't even eat the orange. Try a banana. Look up. Oh, Aaron, do you not see yourself? Boy, no. Let's go. Yeah, I seen what you did.
It's gross.
Yeah.
See, it's gross.
So then why would you want another orange if the orange is gross? I see what you did. Why don't you go ahead and just do the banana, okay?
Mom.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh, you a little monkey now. Okay. Yeah, monkeys do like bananas, but little boys like bananas too. Why you gotta be a monkey? You're so silly. You're the one acting like you're a monkey. He just has to come in here and run everything. Anyways. So, everybody has noticed that I did not do anything in that video. I did not accomplish anything in that video. Soon after, I was sexually assaulted by one of my children's fathers. I lost my job because I was a hit to mental health. And then I was derailed by court proceedings to remove my children by the same men that abandoned them. Because their fathers weren't involved before I dropped them on their doorsteps, okay? Let's be clear. There were court orders for one, but he kind of just came and went when he wanted, creating a difficult pattern for me to adjust to, for my daughter to adjust to, making her behavior rough, you know. I'm actually still on court proceedings. And they actually tried to start the court proceedings. They thought, when I was in my car, the reason I didn't tell them I was in my car is because they thought I was in rehab. And they went ahead and they tried to ambush me by starting court when they thought I was in rehab. So that in itself just goes to show their intentions. So I had went to Maryland because that is where my youngest child's father lived, and that's where my youngest child was. And I had found myself in that parking ride because the miles from where I sat in that parking lot was 333 miles. And so that's why I followed the numbers. And come to find out, that child was placed in peril, and I was able to intervene and get him to safety. And had I not done this, he very well might not be alive right now. I can't say much more about that publicly at the moment. We're still under confidentiality. But it is another abuse that is erected in covert emotional incest. What I was experiencing with my children was called post-separation abuse, doled out by my original. They were abusers. They're abusers, pure and simple. So, currently, in the last year, my youngest son has not left my side for more than a few hours, and in the last 6 months, he has not left my side at all. This has caused thirst for me yet again. And actually, I think when I first started this, I had stated that I couldn't really even make a video without zoning out or speaking to myself, because it actually caused, I was already starting inside the pattern of psychosis. And I had said that it was from prolonged isolation, but I wasn't isolated. I still went to work. I still talked to people. But what it was a culmination of isolation and not having any type of emotional fulfillment. Those two things going together, and then on top of that being abused, messes with your head. This is where psychosis actually comes from, and I know it to be true. I know someone who is psychotic. Not just me, but now because I've experienced it, I know exactly, like when I look back at him and I look at his life, I'm like, oh, this is it. This is where it came from. So, this has caused thirst for me yet again. I'm okay with admitting that. I am kind of desperate now to get out of this enmeshment. As of all of the toxic relationships I've ever experienced, this is the worst. It is not healthy for a child to never leave their parent's side, nor for the parent to not have an adult companion. And you could easily say, well, go to work or send the child to daycare. But that still only satisfies a financial need. I will give to a job. They won't give me anything but money. I will give to a child that cannot give back. Giving to myself some money and items is not actually fulfilling in the slightest. You are deluded into thinking these things equal fulfillment. I've dated myself since my early 20s. I do not have an issue with sitting at a restaurant by myself. I don't have issues keeping people who don't deserve me out of my energy. I am true to myself. Look back at the videos. My voice has not changed. Nothing about my personality has changed. I am my true, authentic self. And always have been, despite being fucked with. Explain to me how many decades I have to do this for before I get to connect, before I get the energy of another. This is a complete mind fuck. You guys are gaslighting each other into thinking that you do not need another human being. You do. We are interconnected. We are interdependent. We are not independent. We are not codependent. We are interdependent, and we do need each other in order to survive. I am like a lone tree standing. I literally gather my energy from nature. You know, I can't sit and have an intimate conversation with my son. This has become draining to me, and is how I ended up in psychosis. Because I'm on the run, a restraining order. I had 2 other children I'm worried about. I'm not being heard. Finances kind of are an issue now. And I just gotta sit here and draw up on myself, or go pay a therapist. You know, we're forcing people to pay a therapist to have just to have a conversation, because there's literally nothing wrong with me. When we get into therapy and she asks me more questions, I'm not one of those people that need, well, tell me how you feel. I really don't. That's not arrogance. It's just I've been to therapy, that I was forced into believing I was sick for so long. Y'all can't. All I want is to just have a person to speak to when I get off work. A person to get a hug from. You know, because I dated narcissists and psychopaths, you know, it wasn't without reason. I now have full understanding of what the fuck is going on here. It had to be done. I don't find anything to be wrong with me for doing that. It was research. But due to dating people like that, I've gone without affection for so long. Not normal. That is not normal, and you're forcing me to think that it's normal and that something's wrong with me because I desire what is normal. I desire interdependence. It's coming off looking codependent. But I've gone so long without. At this point, it's like if I don't get it, I don't know what's going to happen. I'll just keep, I'm keep on keeping on. But think of how many people, like when you go to work, that seemingly seem too open. This is because they are living in isolation or otherwise not fulfilled. Think of all the children in daycare that are really trouble to parents or to teachers. This is because they have a parent who is not emotionally fulfilled, and in turn, they are not either. So, that's just something I want you to think on today. At this point in time, like I said, I'm at a standstill. I have chosen not to go to work. I do have income. Why? Because when I get off work, I'm not going to be emotionally fulfilled, and this is just going to be an endless cycle as it always has been. I'm going to collapse again. Somebody will come in here and give me what the fuck I need, I swear to God. I'm not doing it. This insanity has to stop. My child is going to be suffering. I'd rather us suffer together, sit here broke, than have some money and be paycheck to paycheck again through this little endless cycle and hurting together. And hurting apart, excuse me. We'd be hurting apart because he'd be in daycare and I'd be at work. Doing the same shit we already did. I already did that. So what I'm doing this time is I'm just sitting still. I'm sitting still. You're not about to force me into this fucking matrix. We'll be fine.